Hey, this is Chad with Drawn and Cornered. It is October 18th, 2021, and this is your news for the day. First off, we want to start with, kind of breaking news that Colin Powell is dead at the age of 84. Complications due to COVID. Our thoughts and prayers, go out to their family. Colin Powell is one of the Americans that I think everybody sort of universally got behind as an honest broker, somebody who would tell you the way that it was, regardless of party affiliation or even personal feelings to some extent. He kind of put those aside to make sure that the best for the country was what was going forward, and it was something that we could definitely use a lot more of in today's current climate, and unfortunately, these past. So, sad day for America. Sad day for obviously his family and such, but a good day to also remember that this is kind of a call to action to be a little bit more like him in what we say and do. So as we step forward into the rest of the stories for today, I do want to remind everybody that COVID is still extraordinarily dangerous, still something you should probably be fearful of all the time. As my Facebook ban will tell you, there's definitely a ton of misinformation out there, and I want to be very clear that I'm not misinforming anybody, that it is definitely still something that is very prescient, still very dangerous, still very scary. Caseloads are down over 14 days, down 22%. Deaths are down 19%. If you look at rates amongst children under 18, which is going to be our new hot button as the vaccinations come out, we have less than 1 in 100,000 being affected with cases or hospitalizations under 18. So certainly still something we need to be very, very cognizant of. That 1 in 100,000 rate is terrifying and should be recognized as something we need to deal with very, very quickly, and all hands on deck type of situation. So just to remind you and YouTube, I want to make sure you don't think anything different of me. I'm absolutely taking COVID seriously. It's still very real, still very much a problem for all of us. The next thing we want to talk about is the Joe Biden's agenda, essentially, is in the balance here. Now, we've been pushed off till the end of October for the $1.5 trillion infrastructure bill, which is bipartisan, and the $3.5 trillion everything else stimulus bill that's been put out there. Now, a couple of senators stand in the way of the $3.5 trillion bill, which is Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema. They're starting to find out exactly what needs to be cut from the $3.5 trillion to make it a workable bill for these two senators. Manchin has cut out essentially any sort of climate change proposals from that bill. He is tied to coal in West Virginia, obviously not just his constituency, but personally, he has businesses that are involved in this. So he's being hammered on this. We saw an article from the New York Times talking about all the ways that Joe Manchin's constituency is going to be affected by climate change over the course of the next 100 years, not about how diminishing coal and natural gas will decimate them today, but that's going to be the thrust of what's happening to Joe Manchin now. It's going to be all about how his constituency is going to suffer, about how he is personally tied into these companies, how this is all a strategic decision to make sure that he's continuing to make money, which it could potentially be. I don't know. I'm sure he has the same issues that everybody else does. He needs money. He cares about money. He wants to be richer than God as well. So that's what they're going to hit him with, and they're going to try and soften him up on that. It seems like he's holding pretty hard to this. It seems like he's probably not going to budge on the climate stuff. But the progressives are likewise not going to budget on a lot of the things that they want. So it'll be interesting to see if climate is able to get pulled out. Joe Biden has also opened the door to saying that he is willing to sunset some of these programs a lot earlier. Now, this is the great cat and mouse game that they play with tax bills like this. It's supposed to be budgeted over 10 years, right? That's what these budgets are built around, is like a 10-year program. So what they'll do is, let's say a 10-year program is $2 trillion. Well, they'll just cut it off at 5 years. They'll sunset it after 5 years. Well, now you've got half of that cost. But the problem is that in 5 years, once that social program has existed, once that entitlement program is there, nobody's going to be able to cut that. So you will have to continue to fund it for the rest of that 10 years, 20 years on down the line. That will have to exist. There's nothing more resilient than a government program, as I think Milton Friedman used to say. It's a shell game. And so they have gone from 10 down to 7, from 7 to 5, from 5. Joe Biden is interested in looking at 3-year sunsets on these things to make that bill seem smaller, though the bill is the exact same. There's absolutely nothing that has changed with the bill. There's absolutely nothing that's changed with the cost. It is just a way to hide that next 5 to 7 years of costs under this notion that a future Congress will debate this again and will reinstitute the money at that time. It is the worst version of politics, and you need to be aware of it because it's going to be pushed, and then these numbers that seem smaller are going to be pushed in front of you, and they're utter lies. It's just a pure fabrication. The Biden administration is also moving forward with this seemingly ridiculous statement about how this bill actually costs nothing because it'll be paid for by raising taxes on corporate and wealthy individuals will pay their fair share. It's essentially the word. A great tweet was put out by a reporter, I want to say from Politico, actually, about just how stupid this statement is. And it is extraordinarily stupid, saying that it has no cost, but it will be paid for. In the same sentence, in the same phrase. It has no cost, but it will be paid for because it will be paid for. That's exactly where that cost is. That is, you can't say it is free and also say it will be paid for. Those two things don't exist together. But that's the lie they're trying to push, and they're all pushing it extraordinarily hard. You hear this from Nancy Pelosi, you hear this from Priya Jayapal, you hear this from Joe Biden, you hear this from Jen Psaki. All of them are saying this exact same thing, and it's utter nonsense. It needs to be called out as utter nonsense. The media so far has been doing a pretty good job of taking all these representatives that have been coming forward saying this and being like, that doesn't make any sense. It can't be free and something that you're interested in paying for. Like that doesn't make any sense. So stop saying it. Just stop saying it. That would be my bit of advice for the Joe Biden administration. That is going to get very intense over the next couple of weeks as we near that Halloween deadline to make these two bills happen and see what happens. Now, what's also really interesting is you'll notice that we have a massive supply chain issue. We've got ports that are clogged up. We've got trucks that are backed up, meaning goods are not getting out to the people, which means they become more expensive. Inflation's rising. All of those gains you're making in your wage are being destroyed by inflation on the opposite side. Massive issues on this side, right? This is all infrastructure type stuff. And yet, Joe Biden's not pushing for that infrastructure plan. Like, this would be a great opportunity to really capitalize on and be like, hey, we are struggling right now. Let's get infrastructure passed, ready to go out to the American people. Let's show that we've done something. Will help soften some of these issues, though it probably wouldn't. But at least you have the opportunity to move that bill forward. And it's very important to understand that Joe Biden isn't taking advantage of this moment. He isn't taking advantage to move this one bill over the other because he, just like the progressives, wants these tied together. He wants to be holding that infrastructure bill, which is bipartisan, hostage in the hopes that he can get everything out of that $3.5 trillion bill. It's not going to happen. We'll see what happens come the end of October. The other thing I wanted to talk about is Trump is in court today. He's doing a deposition, I guess not technically in court. He's doing a deposition, answering questions under oath. Now, it's specifically about allegations that his security guards were roughing up protesters outside Trump Tower. So not necessarily about anything dealing with the Trump presidency, nothing dealing with responses to various different items, but just his security guards, Trump Tower. But the fact that he's in a deposition opens him up to essentially any sort of questions these lawyers want to provide. And obviously he'll have his lawyers there saying, hey, that one's not acceptable. But he's in an environment where the capability of perjuring himself is a possibility. So we'll see how that shakes out. I have to believe that Trump's lawyers will have a mallet behind him to hit him over the head if he starts going off the rails on this. But we'll see. Maybe this turns out to be something. I know that it is a fever dream for a lot of folks on the left that he is finally being deposed. He has finally taken the oath. He is finally in front of somebody who can put some real damage into him. We'll see if it turns out to be anything. I have my doubts. That's all I have for you right now. Thank you very much for watching Drawn and Cornered. We do videos every day. A little bit of news, a little bit of analysis, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you like that sort of thing, subscribe down below. Hit that bell so you get notifications every one of those days. We will do weekend episodes if anything big happens, anything that you need to know about. But thank you very much for tuning in, and I will see you again tomorrow.